Hello, San Francisco, and welcome once again to the Angelic Troublemakers. I'm your host, Alan Jones, and on today's program, the Gay Cause Commission. I am bringing you this program today because of something that happened with me almost 4 or 5 years ago with the Human Rights Commission. The San Francisco Human Rights Commission was formed in 1964 based on discrimination against blacks. It was created to help black people fight discrimination in San Francisco. But sadly, it has changed. Now, I understand that you broaden and you help all who are discriminated against. In fact, if I can switch back to my screen here, it says the San Francisco Human Rights Commission works to increase equality, eradicate discrimination, and to protect human rights for all people. Where it says eradicate discrimination, well, that's hard to do if you're doing the discriminating. And when I was in the late December 2013, I was voted onto the San Francisco Human Rights Commission's Equity Advisory Committee. I started January 1st, 2014, and it was supposed to be for a whole year. Well, in the first few months, I realized this is not going to end well. There was a retreat, and in the retreat, the first statement that the heads of the retreat, or the commission, the president, I guess, encouraged us was, do not embarrass the mayor. At the time, the mayor was the late Mayor Ed Lee. Well, when they said that, I said, oh, Lord, if there's something wrong, I'm not going to hold back because it's the mayor while I'm on this commission. So for them to say from jump, don't embarrass the mayor and don't embarrass yourself, well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't mind embarrassing myself. But if the mayor needs to be embarrassed, I don't mind embarrassing him. So for them to instruct me that way, I figured, well, this is not going to end well. And then as we went along with our year's projects, certain things, caught my attention. At the time that I was on this commission, the director was a transgender by the name of Teresa Sparks. And so this director was basically doing a lot of things that directors do, running. I think there was like 17 people under her. And then there was the commission, which was her boss. And so I basically observed for 4 months how the Human Rights Commission, they would run to help anybody who's caught up in a gay cause issue, LGBTQ, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, even if the person was in the wrong, they were ready to go to bat to them until they realized this is a hoax. And the reason why I bring that up is one meeting that I had, I pointed out that it was just reported on the very day that I had this meeting, coincidentally, that some transgender was a part of a hoax, and this commission was ready to give her some money just to help her along. But didn't even know her name. And so the issue is for this commission to go all out and try and help anything that was a gay cause, if you will. I noticed the exact opposite happened when it came to black issues. Now, if you recall, there was 9 people murdered in a church, blacks. And you think that the Human Rights Commission would make a statement, public statement? Nope. But when it was a Jewish synagogue where 2 people were murdered, the director of the Human Rights Commission at the time, Teresa Sparks, sent out a scathing, "We won't stand for this type of violence," and condemned it. Well, all of these things that were going on, were after I was kicked off. But when I was kicked off, I started doing a little digging. And this is the one thing that disturbs me the most. I'm going to briefly go to my website. NBAdoesn'tcare.com, because I have a story up that basically I'm retelling. NBAdoesn'tcare.com is my website, to where I am trying my best to get a message across to the NBA, since my attempts to get the San Francisco voters failed. Where it says here, what is the San Francisco Gay Cause Commission? Well, if you click that on, you'll see it brings you to the story that I wrote. These pictures, if you see, there's quite a few. If I can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, looks like 8 black faces. But that's misleading, because this commission does not do things that are really helping the black community. And I'm bringing you to this lawsuit. The director of the Human Rights Commission at the time, Teresa Sparks, was sued by a black staffer by the name of Thomas Willis. I'm clicking on this document, which you probably can't see, is a settlement document with the city of San Francisco. They agreed to pay Thomas Willis $210,000. Why? Because the Human Rights Commission under Teresa Sparks discriminated against this black man, and he sued. He had proof, and it was recommended they settle the suit. Now, nobody hears about these suits because so many of them happen. They're all hush-hush, and unless you're going down to the Board of Supervisors every week, you ain't going to hear about all of these different suits that were settled. But can you imagine the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, which was formed in 1964 to fight against discrimination against blacks and others, but blacks mainly, today, or 2013, is being sued for discrimination. Now, how hypocritical can you be? You're supposed to fight discrimination and you're getting sued for discrimination. And so, in telling this story, there's a lot of other issues that I see this Human Rights Commission is falling short on. Now, if you notice up here on my website, there's a thing called Black Lives Don't Matter. And when I push that button, it gives several stories, and it will increase. These several stories: one, black gardener treated as slave by white woman, once his trainee. That is the story of a black gardener who works for the Reckin Park here in San Francisco. He trained this woman for 2 years. One day he came in and she was his boss. Well, he filed a complaint. He had been with the city for 23 years and sought that to get a promotion to that same, he applied for that same position. They denied him, and then he ends up coming into work one day and she's his boss, his trainee. Well, how ridiculous is that? Not only is it ridiculous, when he filed his complaint, this woman, in the article that I described, if you click it on, there's his attorney. They lost their case under a ridiculous ruling by the judge, or a few of them, one by the judge and one by the state. But this man on the left, Byron Gill, lost his case, but the woman who he basically brought the case, because of her action, he was being treated like a slave by this woman just because he filed a complaint. Now, that's not right. Now, where's the San Francisco Human Rights Commission on this? Nowhere to be found. Black employees being duped. San Francisco black employees being duped. If you look at this story, which I brought before, the face here is the Department of Human Resources Director, Mickey Callahan. If I could remind you, this Mickey Callahan, her signature is also on the Thomas Willis lawsuit. She was part of that lawsuit. She's head of human resources in San Francisco. Well, the city of San Francisco is calling on her to help fix the problems of racism against black city employees. But she is part of the problem. So how are you going to have her being part of the problem tapped to fix the problem? I don't know if she's a racist, but I do know one thing. The evidence suggests she's been protecting department heads who have been conducting racist actions against black employees for the city. Where is the San Francisco Human Rights Commission on this? Then there's this black woman I mentioned last week, her story. She is a landlord. Her name, Anna Kilagi. She was sued by the city in a ridiculously high amount. She's being forced out of business based on some shenanigans that are too much for me to go into here. But if you go to my Black Lives Don't Matter portion of NBAdoesn'tcare.com and you pull it up, you'll be able to read the full story. But she's basically being treated unfairly by the city of San Francisco. And I say, where is the Human Rights Commission on this? Now, of course, I've mentioned this other issue. This is the most egregious. Bogus felony hate crime conviction. Now, we've heard this week of the shenanigans of an actor by the name of Jussie Smollett, or I don't know the person, and how he faked a hate crime because he felt he was not being paid enough in this movie or program that he was a part of. Empire. Never heard of it. I had my doubts from day one. But this bogus felony hate crime conviction is the story of San Francisco, the district attorney's office, making a bogus hate crime conviction of this black man, Dwayne Kemp. And this bogus hate crime is based on the fact that a white transgender was walking up the street, and this couple, the woman is his wife. This couple, Dwayne Kemp and Rebecca, his wife, were walking up the street. And the white transgender bumped into them rudely. And when Dwayne Kemp said, "Damn, people don't say excuse me anymore," the white transgender turned around and said to the black man, "Get out of my city," and then called him a nigger. Well, Kemp's wife responded to the reference of the slur and poured some coffee on the white transgender. Well, the white transgender went to punch Kemp's lady. At the time, they weren't married. And so then Kemp realized that somebody was trying to hit his woman, and he just went wailing on this white transgender, who her name was Samantha Halsey. And so the end result, Kemp was arrested on a hate crime, and he pled guilty on the promise that he would be released from jail immediately. Well, the DA released him from jail immediately. But then he went to final sentencing. And the judge, "Oh, no, you got to do time for this." And so Kemp said, "Well, wait a minute, that wasn't part of the deal that I tried to bring forth. That I agreed to." And so the judge, Kemp, tried to take back his plea and take the matter to a jury trial. The judge refused and sent Kemp to jail immediately for 9 months. Now, this is a bogus hate crime conviction. Where was the San Francisco Human Rights Commission for this? Now, when I say where were they, sure, they could say, "We didn't hear about this," for any of the stories that I have brought. Well, you live in San Francisco, and I live in San Francisco. You kicked me off the commission when I was there as an equity advisory. If I was still on that commission, I would have advised to follow these cases. I picked them all up in San Francisco newspapers. These are not things that I just invented on my own. So the issue is on my website, NBAdoesn'tcare.com, this website is to illustrate my belief that San Francisco is so racist against its black citizens that it is unfit to be home to an NBA franchise. And I know I have an uphill battle, but I claim I'm doing this with God. And so when I say that the San Francisco Human Rights Commission is basically the Gay Cause Commission, it's because when it comes to gay causes, they're right there, knocking people over just to get up and say and do whatever. But when it comes to black issues, there's a bunch of shuffling of paperwork. Fill out this form, fill out that, we'll get to you. And then, if that, because there are some egregious acts of bias, discrimination, racism, marginalization, indifference, and the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, which claims to be trying to eradicate discrimination, where are they? Now, I'll be first one to admit they do a marvelous job when it comes to issues dealing with the gay community. Excellent job. I've seen them. But the fact of the matter is why are you going to be a city charter commission and you can't see beyond helping anyone other than the gay community? That's my issue. I say that the San Francisco Human Rights Commission should be disbanded or change its name to the Gay Cause Commission, because quite frankly, that's all that they care about. Now, if y'all want to do gay causes, hey, I don't have a problem with that. But don't just call it Human Rights Commission when there's something obviously wrong with the Human Rights Commission. Change the name, to better reflect what you do, what your mission is. That's my wrap on my experience with the Human Rights Commission. The fact that we are here battling all kinds of different discrimination and stuff like that, we don't have time to deal with people who are going to be two-faced, if you will, or they're hypocritical, saying one thing, doing the exact opposite. I'm calling on the San Francisco Human Rights Commission to be disbanded, mainly. Now, if you want to save it and call it the Gay Cause Commission, I'll go along with that. But the fact of the matter is this is not a human rights commission. At best, it's a human wrongs commission for how the wrong it has treated the black community over the years. Keep in mind, in 1970, there was 100,000 blacks, estimate. In 1970, there was an estimated 100,000 people who identified as gay. Today, there's 130,000 who identify as being gay, LGBTQ, whatever one, and only 46,000 who identify as being black in San Francisco. Well, I may have flunked the birds and the bees, but you can't tell me that even with the devastation of the AIDS epidemic, which cost 25,000 minimum lives in San Francisco, how you have 130,000 gays and 46,000 blacks when you both started out in the 1970s at having 100,000 each. San Francisco policies have driven out blacks, and it's not just the economic issue, which people think. No, it's the lack of respect is what drove these black people out of the city. Quite frankly, there's 60% of black residents in public housing today. In other words, too poor to leave the city. But the people who did leave, highly educated black people, said, I can't deal with this. I'm getting out of here. This is not right. And I'm saying that if San Francisco is going to turn the corner, they need to address this issue. And I think that, hey, don't get me wrong. They're not going to disband the Human Rights Commission. I'm just venting, if you will, because the fact of the matter is that this is not right. And don't get me wrong. If there was enough people rising up, I think that there's a strong case to disband the Human Rights Commission, because it really doesn't do anything. And so I come to you to say, San Francisco Human Rights Commission, you ain't fooling me one bit. And I'm saying that you ought to be ashamed of yourself to be so on top of one thing and so on the bottom of the other. And far as the San Francisco NAACP is concerned, I really want to work with the NAACP here. But quite frankly, I think that they're turned into pallbearers, not torchbearers, as I said last week. And though I am going to reach out to them with my concerns, Dr. Reverend Amos Brown, I am telling you, he doesn't need to be convinced of San Francisco being racist. He knows more than anybody how racist San Francisco is, because many people run to him with their racism. And I understand the man, he's getting up there in age and he can't deal with all of this. And I understand that the NAACP doesn't know how to act. But we do have an opportunity. And we do, in San Francisco, need to stand up to the various different agencies that have caused many blacks so much discomfort and to leave. We need to take a stand and start saying, wait a minute, we're not going for this. We are finished with this. 2019, we should make a stand. And as I say on my website here, NBAdoesn'tcare.com, what greater statement than to say, San Francisco, you don't deserve the Golden State Warriors. If you notice in my website, I say here, I left my heart in Oakland. Well, I'm a San Francisco guy. But when it comes to the Golden State Warriors, I left my heart in Oakland, and I think that we should lead the team there too.